or the meat market, the post office, or strollers and bikes. It was really delightfully simple at that time. When our kids were a little older, we moved just outside of town to our current house where we still live.
And so tell us about these two pictures.
So the picture on the right was the year before. It was 1988, and it was my cousin's wedding. And the significant, well, there's two things about this picture. Everybody's mile marker, in the family is when they get to be taller than me. So right now I have one grandson who's still shorter than I am, but Jacob was, in 1989, he was my height, so this was just the summer before. But the significant thing about it is that he wasn't wearing sweatpants. This kid, he was a sports nut, and he wore sweatpants all the time. The night that Jacob was kidnapped, the very first thing when the police arrived is, do you have a picture? And so that was the picture I took off the wall very tearfully. I had all 4 kids' pictures, and I took that one off the wall. It's actually his 5th grade picture. He loved that yellow sweater. He wore it every time there was a dress-up kind of occasion. And he had his 6th grade picture taken 10 days before he was kidnapped, but I hadn't gotten them back yet. So I traveled a lot, and people just think of him as the boy in the yellow sweater. So those are those pictures. I'm going to put this back here and see if it quits rattling. There.
Yep, they do take you back. So this is just, you know, I think visually we remember this. I remember the Sunday night I heard it. I think I heard it on CCO radio, and tell us about that night a little bit.
You know, I was co-chair of an art festival, and we were having a post-festival meeting. You know, what went right, what can we do better for next year? And at the last minute, Jerry and I decided to go. We had a really busy weekend with the kids. So we asked, it was MEA weekend, and our kids didn't have school on Monday, so we asked Jacob if he minded babysitting, staying with the kids while we went to this dinner. He said, sure, no problem, can Aaron come over? So we had 2 6th grade boys. 11 sounds so young now. If I had a do-over, that would for sure. But these are responsible kids. We ordered a pizza, we left, and when I got to our friend's house, I called home to give the kids a phone number, and then they called back. Trevor called and said, we're bored. Can we ride our bikes to the store and rent a video? And my first response was no, it's starting to get dark, find something to do. And Trevor said, well, let me talk to Dad. That's what kids do. So I jokingly handed the phone to Jerry, and then you know, we're eating dinner, and we get another call, and I don't know how many of your parents, but it is the 3rd time we talked to our kids since we left that night. And Jacob said that Carmen didn't want to go with. Is it okay if Rochelle comes over? Rochelle lived next door. She was 13. To stay with Carmen while they went to the store. These are responsible kids. So they went to the store, and on the way back, they were confronted by this masked gunman who let 2 of the kids go and kept Jacob. The kids ran home and said, you know, call 911. Somebody took Jacob, and it was so bizarre. I've met people here who were Jacob's age, and it just was such an extraordinary, unbelievable thing. So we left. I grabbed my purse and we just walked out of these friends' house. They didn't know what was going on. We just said, we got to go. And it began the largest manhunt that Minnesota has ever known. It's unbelievable to me that this October 22nd, it will be 35 years. I mean, that's like a lifetime. It's a career, and I just ponder over that. It's crazy. But the response of the community and the people in Minnesota was so phenomenal. I get credit for a lot of stuff, and I didn't do anything alone. You all carried us with your prayers and support. People brought over, food and Kleenex, toilet paper. People were dropping off everything that you could possibly need to survive this kind of thing. The guy who drains our septic tank came and drained it. There were so many people at the house. He said, I figured you're going to need this. He just volunteered. And our vet came and made sure our dog was okay, and our babysitter had brought her dog too, and because they were going through PTSD, he told me. It was like, but yeah. It was the response of the community where I feel like,
go ahead.
People rallied. Oh, sorry. People rallied and came together for children. It was like this united voice of people standing up and saying, no, you cannot harm our children. And I love that. It's what gave us the opportunity to have, we were told from the National Center that the #1 way kids are found is through TV. Somebody sees their picture, knows their story. So that's when we started doing all of the TV, and the response from the community that they were also covering got us national attention right away. We didn't know where Jacob was, and a couple hours you can be in Canada or North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa. It was like crazy. But one thing that I just want to say is that I miss that. I miss that sense of harmony, of everybody pulling together. Nobody asked what party they are, what religion they are. We were united. And I feel like our world is a little starved for that again. But I wanted to say thank you for all of you who were there. You carried us during a really dark time.
Yeah. I don't know if you can even say, I'm sure you were just in shock, but where was your head like? Was it like just we got to find Jacob, or was it who is this guy?
Yeah, it was out of my realm of consciousness. Who would harm a child? I really had no knowledge or understanding of this. My goal was to find Jacob, and I kept talking to him. Right? It's like, hang on, Jacob, we will find you, but you have to stay strong. And I looked at myself, unable to get out of bed because it was too hard. And I saw Jacob curled up in a ball saying the same thing. They're never going to find me. It's too hard. I can't do this. And I was screaming, come on, Jacob, hold on, stay strong. And I thought, if I'm surrounded by all this support, I got to get out of bed. And it began the journey. Sorry.
He's going to switch your mic there. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So my head was always around finding Jacob, and I learned a lot about the motive and the problems, but I knew our family could heal. Just bring him back, and that remained in my head the whole time.
Yep, I remember didn't they have like a human chain of people, and there was some yellow, were people wearing yellow? Was it a yellow ribbon?
A lot of people used the yellow ribbons, and then there were white ribbons, but it was 5 miles worth of people just holding him. The sheriff told me it had been longer, but it was cold, and people were standing like this instead of arms outstretched.
Yeah.
So Minnesota. But the response was phenomenal. People just helping any way they could, and it became meaningful. It just kept growing. Jerry did all of the media at the beginning. I was in shock. I watched, when we were writing this book, I looked back at old video, and I'm like staring off into space. I didn't say a word for a long time, and finally he needed, some people didn't like the way he looked on TV, and they turned him in as a suspect, and he just brokenhearted. said, no, they don't need to hear from me. They want to talk to you. So he passed the baton.
So you had, I know you had law enforcement, you had local and sheriff, the Stearns County Sheriff Charlie Graff, who was an amazing person. I used to work in Alexandria at the TV station, so I covered him for many years, and just you experienced that, a great guy.
I love Charlie Graff. He was an old gruff guy. He was not much taller than I, smoked constantly, had no patience for media. He didn't want to talk to anybody. He let the FBI do that, you know. But he'd stop over and have coffee. He wouldn't ever have any treats because his wife was a good baker and she had something waiting for him. He had a million funny stories about law enforcement. You have to know, in 1989, they didn't even all have fax machines. So, you know, he'd talk about driving around, and if his wife got a call at home, she'd turn the porch light on, and he'd pull in to see what was the message, where did he need to go. He was just a man full of a million stories, and he had been in law enforcement for 40 years or something. So he called in everybody he knew, every favor, every officer throughout the state, and that was a huge part of us getting support, including the National Guard. He called everybody.
So how long does this sort of go on with the focused attention? When does it start to wane a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know. I never let it.
Yeah. Not for you, but yeah.
There were leads. People were very helpful in turning in leads of, you know, somebody who had victimized, you know, I had a neighbor come over, and he said, there's so many things I want to say about this, but he told me that he had turned in one of the priests that he'd worked with. He had suspicious behavior, always hanging around kids. He turned in his grandfather because he had sexually molested kids in his own family. He turned in a neighbor, and I was like, thank you, Joel. I really do appreciate it. A lot of people who were victimized and never talked about it, they would turn in those names as well. And so people were very candid in trying to help us. And I was given opportunities that a lot of people don't have. I feel blessed in meeting people. The chair of the board for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which is in Alexandria, Virginia, the chair of the board was a pediatrician at Mayo Clinic. So he heard me talking to communities and heard our message of what we were trying to do and invited me out to the National Center. And I joined their board of directors in 1991, I think. It was like a couple of years after. I was also invited to speak. There was another kidnapping in South Florida, and the child was found murdered, and the parents were so angry and they were blasting law enforcement. So I got a call from law enforcement, can you come down and we're going to have a public meeting and maybe help work with us in calming the community down. And so I did that 3 times. They had 3 separate meetings, and finally they said, you know, we're paying all the speakers, maybe we should hire you as a consultant. So I did that for all until 2021. I was speaking, doing law enforcement trainings with first responders, Amber Alert training, long-term missing training. So I was working with police all the time. To answer your question,
Yeah.
Before I'd do a presentation, I'd call the sheriff's department. It's like, anything new? You know, I wanted to move our file from the bottom of the pile to the top, and so that they would still, and they'd say, we're still following leads, still things are happening. And so throughout, I have to thank law enforcement. They never quit, they never gave up, and that I was eternally grateful for.
Yeah, you'll see that in a show, right? You'll see that in some crime show where it's like, is anything new? And you kept that focus on them, because other things start to come in, and they, you know, I think people feel they reach a dead end sometimes.
They do, and there's nobody likes to not succeed. These guys poured their heart and soul into trying to help us, and we didn't have answers. But along the way, I got to meet kids who'd come home after a long period of time. And that's what they told me from the National Center right away. There's missing kids out there, don't quit. And so I got to meet Elizabeth Smart, who was gone for 9 months. I worked with her parents while she was gone. Ed and Lois were at the National Center, and we spoke and tried just brainstorming ideas. Got to meet J.C. Dugard, who was gone for 17 and a half years, you know. She's got a healing ranch in Southern California, bringing victims of trauma or exploitation or assault, and works with horses, and she's just amazing. 2 of the Cleveland women, 10 years they were gone, and I met them at the National Center, and they own their lives. They get to decide what they're going to do today, what they're going to wear, who they're going to talk to, or if they're going to watch TV, if they want to go for a walk. They own every minute of their lives, and I thought, boy, we can learn a lot from that. You know, what are you going to do with today? Because they didn't have that freedom for 10 years, and now they do, and it's just, they're amazing. Everybody worries when they come back they'll never be the same. They're not the same, but they are really amazing people doing amazing work, and that was heartening to me. It was a big part of my learning along the way. That's where the hope is. That hope is real, but hope is, it's a verb. You don't see parents of missing children sitting with their feet up on the cushion, just waiting for you hope something comes in today. No, we're active, we're out there, and we need you all to care.
How do you think that you influenced law enforcement in how they investigate, you and others?
I asked them, what did they need? You know, what would have helped you find Jacob sooner? And the very first thing they said were 2 things. A central repository of information. We did not have one centered database. Every agency had their own files, paper files, but that computer system had not been built. They were working on it. But the second thing was sex offender registration. It would have been helpful to know who's in the area who've committed crimes against children before. So we worked and passed that in 1991, I think, in Minnesota. And then people were calling National Center and saying, which states don't have it? My boyfriend's getting out of prison and trying to decide where he wants to live. And I thought, we can fix that.
Yeah, called the wrong person there.
Yeah. So Dave Durenberger and Jim Ramstad were 2, just champions of helping to pass it on a federal level. And it's a tool. There's problems with the tool because then afterwards everybody kept wanting to make it stronger, and suddenly they were registering children, like 8 years old, who'd committed some sexual crime. And I'm like, no. If they're 8, they need help. They need counseling, therapy, and they can turn their lives around. But if you've got an adult, a 50-year-old guy who's assaulting children, they need to be found. So it's a tool, and when I did trainings, it's hopefully now there's so many more tools with technology and everything, and genealogy and fingerprinting, DNA's better. So it's a tool in your garage full of tools. It's just one. And the bottom line is, it's the guy who took Jacob wouldn't even have been on a registry. He'd never been arrested for a sexual crime. So it's just one tool. And I think it's helpful in some cases because time is your enemy. It gives you some place to start with, and it clears people fast too.
Yep. So you're moving along through this, and you're doing your advocacy. How are you dealing with your grief through this process?
She asks hard questions. I didn't do well at the begin. Well, I had gone through some counseling before Jacob was taken. My kids were in school, and I was deciding, what do I want to do next? You know, I had been a math teacher, and I eventually went back and got my license renewed. And so I had gone through that whole process of introspection and, who are you? And So when Jacob was kidnapped, our therapist and his wife came over to our house every night. They had their clients during the day, and they'd come over to our house at night and just be there for me and for my family. They were so calm in the storm. My mom talked to Dan a lot. It was this calming presence, and that was really helpful. I was very physically active before Jacob was taken, and I remember an FBI guy saying, "What did you used to do with all this energy?" So I used to dance, and nothing inside of me wanted to dance, but I started working out, and it was like taking a broom and sweeping out the attic and letting all that dust and crap out of there. So exercise was a huge part of me in terms of self-care.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we had these other three kids who were needing a lot of attention and support. Trevor slept in a sleeping bag on the floor in our bedroom for 9 months, maybe a year, a long time. We made sure that they felt safe. The scary thing, I get asked this a lot, I bet you never wanted to let them out of the house ever again, but it was sort of the opposite. When I looked in these kids' eyes, I saw sheer terror. Trevor was there, and I didn't want them to live in a world that where they were afraid to go out. And so I would nudge them. It's okay, Carmen. You can go with Candace to watch the fireworks. Hold hands, and her parents will bring you home, and you'll be okay. And I mean, there's times when I would do that, and then I'd burst into tears once they left, because it was important to me. And I got letters from kids. The letters from children are really what carried me. It's like, don't stop looking for Jacob. I'm looking too. If my parents quit hoping for me, I wouldn't want to go home. It's like we need to show them that we will never give up on them, so that, if something does happen, they know they can talk to you, or they can talk to, a trusted adult. And it was just a process of learning. They didn't want to do therapy. I tried to get Trevor to talk to a counselor. He came home after the second time, and he said, "This guy doesn't know anything about what I'm going through. You're wasting your money." He said, "If you want to pay somebody, pay my friends. I'll talk to them." So the arrangement was, okay, guys, I'll go to therapy, and then I'm bringing it all home.
Yeah.
So we did, and we had family meetings, a lot of communication. I didn't want them to go to school and hear rumors. I didn't want them to, not have all of the, we were very cautious about sharing details or horrible leads and stuff like that, but we kept them in the loop with communication so that they knew that they could talk to. One time we had a conversation about what do you do if somebody says something mean or angry. Carmen was at camp, and she wore her Jacob's Hope t-shirt, and one of the girls came up to her and said, "My mom says he's dead, and you shouldn't even bother." So I get a call from the nurse saying, "Carmen's sick. You need to pick her up." So we had a huge conversation. How do you respond to that? And Trevor said, "It's like, you don't know what you're talking about," and walk away. And Carmen said, or Amy said, "That's not what we think." So we processed things. People don't want to be mean, but sometimes, especially kids, they're going to repeat what they hear. And to just give our kids some empowering language to get through the situation. It was a tough thing. And then I was on media, and that I know was hard on them sometimes. We used to go to the mall and, back to school shopping, and they didn't want to go to the mall with me anymore because people would burst out crying sometime at the beginning. Or this was what hurt me the most. I'd be walking with my kids through the mall, and somebody would have their kids walk, and they just huddle them and walk like it was contagious. They were gonna lose their kids if they came too close or something. That was hard. But I knew it. I get it. The fear was so real. It was so real for all of us. Either, you were a kid and your life changed, you didn't have permission to go places anymore or ride your bike, or you were a parent. I've met people who were pregnant during that time, and imagine raising your very first child when this is all over the news. It was a scary time, and really what I wanted to do was take away the fear, because scared kids are not safer. Kids who are empowered have information, they're connected to community, to church, to neighbors, so that they know they're not alone. It's important.
Your empathy is astounding, and the fact that you could, muster that for others during this is quite something. And I know that serves you well, and I'm sure it served your children very well.
And I love kids. I love their perspective on things. I got a letter from a young girl. She was 12, and she said, "I just read your book. All my friends were reading it. My mom read it, and I thought that was kind of young for reading it." But she was learning, and they were talking, and she wrote this lovely poem about what kids deserve. Kids deserve to feel safe, to be loved, to be, to have housing. It was so sweet. And I think if we lose sight of the way the world should be, it's hard to find a path to get there. It's like, let's still believe. I want it to take away the world that Jacob knew. And it was a good world. It was kind. It was being gentle with others. The 11th attributes.
Yeah, I was thinking of that. So there's it's your foundation, right? Jacob 11.
Well, what happened?
Or how do you explain it?
What happened was after the guy confessed and told us what happened and where Jacob was. It was a horrific week, and it was 1 week, and then on Tuesday,
Yeah.
I
don't have that
Yeah,
one.
that's okay. It was Labor Day in 2016, and on Tuesday there was a hearing. So we found out what happened on the day before. I mean, we knew his remains had been found, but we didn't find out what truly happened until the day before. And then there was this hearing, and then about 6 weeks later, there's a trial or a sentencing. Think about any major crime; it never happens that fast. So I'm grateful, but it was stunning. And after the first hearing, one of our friends at the National Center, Allison Fay, is our director, and she was a classmate of Jacob's and also worked at the National Center for a while. So she was walking out of the courtroom, kind of a mess, and got a call from the National Center. One of our friends said, "My nephew, they have a soccer tournament coming up this weekend. What number was Jacob? I know he had his soccer jersey on, and he wants to put," it was 11, "he wants to put an 11 on his cheek for the soccer tournament, and his whole team will do it. Was that okay?" And so when they asked us, Jerry and I thought, this little kid wanted to honor the way Jacob lived. And I thought it was such a gift to think about the way Jacob lived instead of this horrific thing that we were facing of how he died. And so we said yes, and the office put together the 11. And whenever I go to say them publicly, I'll forget some of them. But it was be fair, be kind, be honest, be gentle with others. I'm not going to state them all. There's 11. I love that they did that. And then the Minnesota Twins wanted to put it on their uniforms, and the Vikings did a thing at a game. And they had 11 kids on the field. Zach Parisi wore number 11, and he had hockey players with a dictionary standing up. Be kind, and they describe what that is. Be gentle. You don't hear hockey players saying those 11 after. It was really a beautiful way. The 35W bridge was lit blue, Jacob's favorite color, for 11 days. And it just gave all of us a way to heal, a way to process, something to do. The septic tank guy came back to our house. He said, I had to bill you this time, but we gave you a special rate. And he charged me $11.11. Amazing.
Amazing.
People are good. There's way more good people in the world than bad, and I don't want us to lose sight of that. That's the gift that Jacob gave us.
Yep. He also, I don't know, I think he brought out your resilience. And resilience is an amazing thing in life, I think. I mean, it's really what you need to go through all of life's changes and come out where you can live with hope and joy and possibilities, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was sharing with her, Trevor, I have to just tell you a little bit. You can show the picture about her. That's the question I get asked the most is, how are your kids doing? They're amazing. I'm so proud of all of them. Amy in the striped dress in the back teaches special ed in Brooklyn Center, and she's got a tough job with special ed high school kids. But when they were asking her what she was studying to become a special ed teacher, they asked everybody, why did you choose this? I thought her answer was brilliant. She said, you know, everybody looks at special ed kids differently. I get that. She totally understands. She was 13. She went through a lot. Let's see, they're not all in order. In front of her is Belle and Maisie. My youngest daughter has twins. She works with adults with disabilities so that they can have the best life possible. Trevor is the baldy guy in the back. His son, Jake, is taller than Jerry. He's 15. They're all into theater. He's built the happiest house you could ever find. He didn't find happiness. He built it. They're into theater. He's got a costume for everything. A couple years ago, he was Elf on the Shelf, and he was posing on the kitchen counter, looking through the windows. It's just playful and fun. It's like he found that 10-year-old who also got stolen. Today, Lily, who's in the center with the short jean skirt on, turned 20. She was 11 when Jacob was found. It was hard times. And Izzy next to her. Finn is the youngest that I'm hanging out with. He's still shorter than I am. But a year ago, he wanted Jerry and I to take him Christmas shopping for his dad or his parents. He knew what he wanted to get his mom. You know, she's surrounded by all these guys, so anything, perfume, lotion, candles, anything girly. But Dad was tricky. And so we took him to like a super Target in Colorado, and we're walking up and down every row. And finally, he found something, and he put it in the cart. And I just looked at him, Finn, is that what you want to give your dad? And he looked me straight in the eye, and he said, it's a possibility. He filled his cart with possibilities. We walked through this. It gives me the chills, makes my heart swell. He changed my life that day, you know? It's like we need to view the world as having all of these possibilities. Eventually, he only got to choose one, but it was easier when it was a finite group. But I think that was such a gift, because sometimes we don't see the positive and the possibilities that are out there for all of us. So I'm still learning from my kids. They're so much fun. We get together every summer for a week. The kids put on a skit or a talent show and sing a song and dance and whatever. So last year we did one for the adults too, so we all came in cowboy hats and bandanas and did line dancing. The funniest part was just, I wish I had the audio to just hear them roaring. We're playful, we have fun, and I'm just so very proud of what they've done with the trauma. In spite of the trauma, they know the joy.
I've heard so many great threads through this. I hope you have too. I mean, just so many lessons without having to tell us. You've shown us. And that's a teacher, right? And the teacher in you is so alive and well, and your love for kids. I just want to see if anyone has questions. We can take a couple questions, and then we do have some of Patty and Joy Baker's book, which will touch on partly if you're a sleuther like I like to have fun doing things like that, that's in the book, and that's available for $20 outside. Jill is sitting there right now, and Patty has time to sign a few books. She and her family are huge Vikes fans, so she's got plans, as I'm sure you do. Questions?
I have like 4 million questions, but I had seen you speak once before, and I remember you talking about sort of the like negative side of all of the media attention. I was curious about that, and also that was before that they knew what had happened to Jacob. So I wondered, and this is going to sound like a stupid question, was there a sense of relief in knowing? Or because when I saw you speak before, you were so inspiring because of your strength and your hope. Like, how did that change?
It's a really, really good question. Thank you. The media was kind to us. I honestly, the Twin Cities media was respectful and kind, and they had stuff they never aired. I was frustrated, and I just talked, just like, and the cameras are rolling, but it's like, please don't show that. We went through a lot of trauma when Jacob was found, and I needed to know. I believe the whole state and country needed to know. There's a man out there who steals kids, and I really never focused on him. I don't say his name. It's like he had too much power and control over us for too long. But after Jacob was found, you're right, I had this message of hope. I started a group for parents, parent-to-parent mentoring called Team Hope. And we'd pulled 24 families together and to serve as mentors. And now they have over 500 volunteers, and they've assisted over 110,000 people since that group started. It was all about hope. And so when Jacob was found, I was like, who are you now? I was lost. I was devastated, and we needed the answers. So it took me a couple years to process and try and redefine who I was and who I wanted to be. Writing the book was cathartic. I never stopped to look back. I was so driven. What's next? Who do we talk to next? Where do we need to go? What can help other kids? It was constantly going forward. So it was finally a chance because I felt terrible. When Jacob was found, I didn't accomplish the one thing that I'd set out to do. So it was like I had many arguments with God. I was like, what was that all about? I was lost for a long time, but when I could write Joy Baker was such a gift. She's brilliant. She asked the questions that eventually worked with law enforcement to get us our answers. And the other thing is DNA advanced, because they had run Jared's clothing, the other victim, many times, but DNA finally got a hit on this guy, so we got our answers. I have, and it came, a sense of calm. Nobody can hurt him anymore. He's in a beautiful place. We can go visit. I talk to him still. I was just with a therapist. I collect therapists. People have neighbor friends, or I collect therapists. She's a grief counselor, and she said she's trying to change the language so we don't say past tense, like he was loved. He's still loved. I carry Jacob in my heart. Every time I see an eagle, it's like, hi, Jake. We have our connections, and he was such an important part of our lives and such a special person. I still love him very deeply. So the healing comes I still talk to him. I was just writing a letter, another Dear Jacob letter, with this 35th anniversary. I don't even know what to say, but I feel like that connection. And my mom passed away along the journey. My nephew's here. He knows all of the trauma we've gone through. But I know Jacob was greeted by my mom, my sister, his grandparents. One of the kids wrote me this letter. His name was Dalton. He was in 2nd grade. He wrote this at the beginning on that 2nd grade paper, with the wide thing and a line in the middle. And he said, I hope Jacob's all right. If he's not, you'll see him in heaven. He said, my dog died. If Jacob's gone, he can play with my dog. Is that the best vision? That was a vision that carried me for so long, just picturing Jacob playing with Dalton's dog. And now I know he's playing Yahtzee with my mom and, and cards and football. And so it's a vision I have that is happy. Thank you. That was a good question.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. Our son was 11 when Jacob was kidnapped, and so I've followed this all through. And we also have a lake home near Annandale, and every time I go through Annandale, I know where the place was that he lived, and I just pray for Jacob every time I walk by there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. The prayers carried us. A lot of times when people say, why aren't our prayers working? I'm like, they are, don't stop. Kept our marriage intact. Kept my kids happy and growing forward. And thank you. They do work.
So I just have a question. I'm a parent to 3 small kids, but they're getting to the age where I can let them out and go do things. And so I tend to lean to be a little more scared as a parent of the world that we're in today. And you've done so much work. Are there ways or tools or things that are helpful for parents on how to educate your kids and keep it positive so they don't grow up to live in that world of fear like you described?
Right. There's some great tools, both on the national missingkids.com and on the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center about how to talk to kids. But I think the most important thing is to talk to your kids. Ask them about, how was your day? Carmen always plays a high-low. What was your high of the day? What was your low of the day? And it invites conversation. How did you feel when this happened? And so you're connecting with them on a very open way. And we used to play a what-if game. What would you do if? And it kind of gives you insight into what. And I wrote a book once for kids. And I called it What Else? Because their response was, I'd karate kick him here, and that's good. What else could you try? Because it's, they have good imaginations, and you don't want to stifle that, but sometimes they need to have another route to take too. So I just think it's what you won't talk to your kids about that scares them the most. And somebody said the other day, I was at a meeting, and they said, I've become a helicopter parent. And it's like, I don't like that phrase. There's a lot of parents who are more engaged and involved in their kids' lives than they used to be, and that's a good thing. It's just knowing who your friends are, where do they go, what do they talk about. The internet is scary. You can do some engagement with your kids on the internet so that they know that they shouldn't tell all. I don't post pictures you don't want grandma to see. But I just think there are tools that'll help calm you down. But I think the most important thing is to just love your kids and be with them and communicate.
Patty, thank you.